Gabby Baffoni is the Associate Professor of Music, Single Reeds at Southeast Missouri State University. She'll be presenting from transitioning from high school to college. We have Roddy Terrell, who is a teacher and performer and a doctoral student at UNC Greensboro. He'll be presenting on transitioning to grad school. And then we have Eric Salazar, composer, performer, and educator based in Indianapolis, Indiana. And he'll be presenting on transitioning into the professional world. Let's go ahead and jump on in. Gabby, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you very much for having me. Okay, so if anybody's having trouble seeing that, just let me know. I am Gabby Baffoni from Southeast Missouri State University, and I'm going to talk about the transition from high school to college. So pretty much any one of these topics we could talk for a whole day about, but I'm just going to give a real overview of the things that I've noticed as a teacher of mainly undergrad students as they come in from high school. So one is, I think you want to think as you're beginning the transition, what kind of participation you want to have in college. So this can be as an ensemble participant. So maybe you don't want to study music, take music classes, but you want to keep playing in ensembles and marching band and concert band, et cetera. And you can mostly tailor this to as much or as little participation as you want throughout your time at school. You can look at a music minor if you are interested in continuing your study of music, taking lessons and playing in ensembles throughout your time, probably taking a few classes, usually in music theory and music history, but perhaps aren't looking to pursue music as a career. And then if you are looking to pursue music in some form as a career, then probably you're looking at a music major. This is obviously the most intensive participation. Most schools of music will have three basic kinds of music majors. Performance major for those who want to have a career as a performer, so performing in a professional orchestra or band or in a chamber ensemble. A music education degree for those who see themselves as teaching music, usually in the K through 12 schools. And then the Bachelor of Arts degree in music, which differs a bit from school to school, but is usually the most broad, general and liberal arts oriented degree. It often pairs with a minor or a double major. And then there are some other majors that are at some schools, but not at all schools, at least not yet. Music therapy, music business are two examples of those. So if you're thinking about those kinds of majors, my advice would be to check the school's website to make sure they have an undergraduate major in it before you add it to your list of schools to apply to. So the major adjustments that I've seen most students coming in from high school making as music majors have to do with two things: pace and volume. So one, the pace of work tends to be accelerated from high school to college in lessons and ensembles. So you may be asked to learn etudes, for example, and scale patterns at a faster rate than you were used to in high school. Also, you probably are going to be doing more performances per semester. You may be playing in more ensembles than you were before, which means there's more music to learn there too. So there's more music and you need to be able to learn it at a faster rate. And this is a big adjustment sometimes. So time management becomes really important. And I think college students often are coming from a schedule that is largely structured for them in terms of the school day. And then you go on to the college schedule, which for the most part, you control your time for better or for worse. So my two pieces of advice there are to, one, schedule your practice time into your day as if it were a class and do it at that time each day. And two, to organize your practice sessions so that you make sure you're hitting all those different types of music, ensemble music, lesson music, scales and patterns, all that kind of stuff, so that you cover everything and can use your time efficiently. Another thing that's a different adjustment for most students coming in as a college music major, especially, sometimes minors too, is that you'll probably be playing more hours a day than you're used to doing before. Even if you took lessons and played in a lot of ensembles, there's an uptick in the number of hours per day you're going to play between lessons and ensembles. This means that you may be at risk for an injury. I myself had tendinitis in my first year of college study. And it was just because I was playing more and more intensely than I had been before. So I think plan for lots of breaks in your practicing, learn some stretches to make sure that you're not overworking, and just general self-care, getting sleep and drinking enough water and all of those kinds of things can really help to mitigate that injury risk, excuse me. So the next slide is there are three things about most college music programs that students coming in don't always know about. And the first is how ensembles are structured, how ensemble auditions are structured. Usually at the beginning of the semester, there's an audition. Sometimes it's each semester, sometimes it's once at the beginning of the year, and it depends on the ensemble. And you can check with professors for the audition music, also where to sign up for those auditions, where to go for those auditions, all of that kind of information, either your instrument professor or with the ensemble professor. So this is a good question to ask if you are interested in ensemble participation when you come for a visit at the school, is what's the procedure for auditioning for ensembles? Studio class, sometimes it's called master class. This is a gathering of all the students who play your instrument, or sometimes all the students who play your category of instrument, like woodwind studio class or single reed studio class. It's usually a combination of performance class, where students perform for each other and get feedback from each other or from the teacher or both. Sometimes there are special topics. When I have a guest artist in town, for example, they'll come to studio class and sometimes talk about their research area. We talk about performance anxiety or things like that. Sometimes clarinet ensembles or clarinet choir is part of studio class. Sometimes it's a separate ensemble as well. So this combination of things, how it's structured, how often it meets, all of those kind of things vary from studio to studio and from school to school. So this is another question that I think as you're thinking about making that transition, it's a good thing to ask. Sometimes everyone who takes a lesson comes to studio class. Sometimes it's only music majors. So it just depends on how that teacher structures their individual studio. And again, that's a good question to ask. And the third thing that I think is worth thinking about as you're contemplating the transition is juries. So juries are the final exam for lessons. So instead of taking a written exam, like you would for a classroom class, you will play a solo performance in front of a panel of faculty. So this might be like if you are in high school and you take lessons, the recital at the end of the year, and this is very similar, except instead of an audience, you have the panel of faculty, and it counts as your final exam. So how those are scored, what the requirements are, how much of your final grade it counts for, all of that varies from studio to studio. And that's another question that I think is a good thing to sort of have on your mind as you're checking out schools and starting to think about making those decisions. Okay. I see my 2-minute warning. So the college audition, one thing to think about is whether you want to come on an audition day or schedule a day at a different time. Depending on the size of the school, you may have more or less flexibility there, but it's worth asking. The requirements vary from school to school. So you can check those usually on the school's website, or you can email the professor. My best advice for that is to make a spreadsheet with all the audition requirements of the schools you're looking at, so you can overlap your repertoire as best as possible, and sort of streamline the experience for yourself. Reach out to your professors, take a lesson if you can, for the schools that you're interested in. Some of the professors will offer free lessons to prospective students, and some will charge for those lessons. It's okay to ask before you go which it is. And then my last slide here is, you've gotten into a music program as a major, as a minor, congratulations. Then what do you do next? I would say establish yourself in a summer practice routine so that you can start to build that stamina, so you don't put yourself at risk for injuries, with your standard stuff. And if you're going to be a music major, check with your new professor to see if there's specific material they want you to work on. So they may have a particular warm-up routine they do with their studio. They may have particular etudes, point you in the direction of ensemble music, and they might get you started on repertoire right away. So the sooner you do that, the more you'll kind of know what to expect. And that, plus establishing that physical practice routine, I think really helps you to ease that transition. And that's it in a nutshell. Like I said, I could talk more and more about any of these at length, but if you have any questions, my email is here. I'm happy to talk about any or all steps of that process in more detail if you've got questions. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you, Gabby. So next we have Roddy Terrell, who's going to be presenting on going from undergrad to grad school. Roddy, excellent. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Meredith. I'm very excited to share with you guys. So let me share the screen. And okay. All right. So as Meredith said, I'm going to be talking about the transition between undergraduate studies and graduate studies. So applying to graduate school, you've decided that you want to go to grad school. You enjoyed your 4 years of college. What do you do first? So I recommend that you spend your junior year of college touring schools, visit the facilities, take a lesson with your potential primary professors, sit in on classes and rehearsals, and talk with students in the studio. You also want to decide what you want to do your graduate degree in. Are you looking to do a degree in education, performance, arts administration? There are lots of options available to you at the graduate level that you may not know. What schools are you looking at? Having a small number of graduate schools can take a little bit of the pressure off. Make sure you do the research and have narrowed down your list to include schools that you would be happy to attend. Graduate school is all about your connections with your professors and classmates, and you want the experience to be as enjoyable as possible. What kinds of financial aid does the school offer? You need to be aware of all things financial before you decide which school you want to attend. Is it affordable? What options do you have about funding? Again, you want to enjoy the experience of graduate school without worrying about how you're going to pay for it. So do the research. I also recommend that you look at between 4 and 6 graduate schools. Having a smaller pool of schools will really help you. As Gabby said, keeping a spreadsheet of audition rep. If you have a smaller list that you're looking at, then you can really pick and choose and sort of get those lists together. And I recommend completing your applications early. Completing your applications early will save you a lot of headache and heartache in the future. You will thank yourself by the time you've completed, by the time the auditions and the interviews roll around, that you've completed all of the paperwork ahead of time. You want to use the preparation time to really showcase yourself as a person and a performer. The last thing you need to worry about is completing the application. Oh, sorry about that. So, you got into grad school. Congratulations. This is a huge milestone. So now what do? You want to find an affordable place to live. Many graduate students room together, so chances are you will be able to find a room with current or future students. I know at UNC Greensboro, they offer, they'll send an email, like a big email blast to all the incoming students where they're with wanted ads, where you can get in touch with other grad students and really find a place to live. A lot of schools make you pay for parking. So make sure you have a plan. It took me over a year to get off the waiting list at UNCG for a parking pass. So you want to make sure that you factored in parking into your schedule. Do you have time to get to and from where you're living to class? Do you have, how long is the walk? How much is the parking? You want to make sure that you have a plan for this. Do you need a part-time job? You have to be aware of regular household bills. Being a graduate student means that you probably don't have a meal plan anymore. Can you afford to pay for groceries, insurance, phone? Make sure you have enough money to afford being a student so you can focus on being a student. Notice that I keep saying a lot that you want to take care of things ahead of time so you can focus on school. That's really what this is all about. Those 2 years are up to you, so you want to take charge of that, which leads me to my next point. 2 years passes by very, very quickly. You can do as much or as little as you want. I would obviously encourage you to do as much as possible. Take those scary music theory courses. Take courses on musicology and ethnomusicology. You never know if you have skills in other areas until you've tried. Apply to present and perform at conferences. Reach out to the music composition studios and offer your services as a performer. You can really bolster your CV with so many different things while in graduate school. Most degrees require 30 to 34 credits, which is roughly 9 to 12 credits a semester, and it really does leave you time to explore everything. For example, I took a lot of courses in musicology and, to my horror, discovered that I really enjoy research and writing. In addition, because of the extra classes I took, I'm going to be completing a post-baccalaureate certificate in musicology this December. How exciting is that? I'm earning another degree in something I never thought I could do. In addition, I co-wrote an article in the ICA Online with my teacher, Dr. Andy Hudson, and the UNCG Clarinet Octet is going to perform at a national conference this fall. None of these things were ever on my radar, but I allowed myself to think outside of the box and really made this degree worthwhile. Make a schedule. As Gabby said, making a schedule is very important. Being early to just about everything is how I live my life, and it really does make everything easier. You avoid traffic, you can give yourself time to calm down before a presentation or performance. Knowing your schedule can help you plan for success. Keeping track of assignments, classes, performances, anything will be key to your success as a student. I can't emphasize this next point enough. Take time for you. I try to budget it. Oh Lord. Sorry about that. I try to budget at least one day a week where I do things that I enjoy. Running, reading, video games. It can be anything you want, but really take some space for yourself. If you aren't mentally healthy, then everything starts to feel difficult. Get to know your area and your people. This is going to be your home for the next 2 years, or however long your degree program is, so you really want it to feel that way. Take time to explore where you live. Often, school campuses have an area where you can enjoy coffee, eat at restaurants, shop at local stores, really get to know where you live. It's going to make spending 2 years there even better if you enjoy it. Spend time getting to know people. Having a social network will be invaluable to you during your time in graduate school. Study sessions or study breaks are always more fun if you're doing it with people whose company you enjoy. You're going to be spending a lot of time with these people, so why not get to know them better? The music world is very small, and chances are these connections you form in school will lead to job opportunities in the future. Which leads me to the next point. Be a good human being. Being kind to others costs you literally nothing, and it makes everyone feel better. You want to foster an environment where you support each other. Toxic environments where competition is rampant and you tear each other down to make yourself feel better only makes your time in school terrible. Be kind to each other. Now, this next slide is very, very scary. What happens if you don't get any financial assistance to attend graduate school? So these are just a few of the thoughts that I had about alternatives to funding. Take a gap year. Taking a gap year where you work, teach, and perform is not a bad idea. Schools allow you to defer for a year so you can spend the time to set yourself up for financial success while attending school. You can also move to where you'll be attending school and live and work for a year. This qualifies you for in-state tuition, which will make graduate school even more affordable. The U.S. military may sound scary, but it gives you more benefits than you might be aware of. Between graduate school at LSU and UNC Greensboro, I actually served 4 years in the U.S. Army. I was an Army bandsman. During this time, I was able to complete a master's degree in business administration, which the Army paid for. In addition, I used my GI Bill to completely pay for my master's degree in clarinet performance. 4 years sounds like a long time, but you just did it with your undergraduate degree. And finally, student loans. Student loans are my absolute last choice for funding. With student loans, you're borrowing money from yourself. Remember that when you're out of school, you'll need to factor in these payments with other life bills, mortgage, car, kids, so you really want to be smart about this option. If you believe the cost of school outweighs the amount of student loans you will have to pay in the future, by all means, take them. But know what you're getting yourself into and make a smart, informed decision. And I have about 2 minutes left. Taking an extended break. You don't have to complete your degrees in any time frame but your own. There are people that are able to go from undergrad to graduate school to a doctoral program and be fine. Others may need some time to figure things out. That is okay. I started my undergraduate degree in 2006, and I just finished my master's in Clarinet in May of this year. It took me about 15 years from starting undergrad to finishing my master's. Along the way, I was able to complete my master's in business, as I mentioned before, spend 4 years in the Army. I took a year between the Army and my master's degree to teach privately, and along the way, I fell in love and got married. Your future career success is not linear. And some final thoughts. Graduate school is challenging, but it's not impossible. Those 2 years are really going to be what you make of it. So take chances. Take classes that you never thought you could take before and really dive in and figure out what you want to do for the future. Make smart choices about your finances and what you want to do with your life. These 2 years, like I said, are really up to you. So you've got time to kind of plan and figure out what things you can do, and having a financial plan, a budget that you live by, is really going to pay dividends in the future whenever you're already ready to set these things up. Which, again, be organized and have a plan. I can't tell you how many times my compatriots at UNC Greensboro have given me a hard time because I'm about 30 minutes early to just about everything. Can't help myself. It's just, it makes my life easier. And the last 2 points, take time for yourself. You want to be as mentally healthy as possible. Graduate school is hard, so make sure you're taking care of yourself. And just finally, enjoy your degree. It's a blast. You make some connections with wonderful people, and you really want to enjoy your time. And that's all I've got. Thank you guys so much for having me today. And if you have any questions, I'll feel free to answer them. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Roddy. Next up, we have Eric Salazar, who is going to be talking to us about transitioning into the professional world. All right, Eric.
All right. Hi, everyone. Just a couple real quick housekeeping things. Vanessa posted a survey for your feedback. I just want to reiterate, please take that survey. Feedback is good. I would suggest maybe clicking on it right now and then toggling back to Zoom so it's pulled up when the meeting is over and you can take it. We'd really appreciate it. I'm going to be talking today about something that I call networking for introverts. So regardless of what degree or degrees you have acquired, it's essential that when you enter the field as a professional, that you have people who can help you do what you want to do professionally. So I actually have a handout that I am going to post in the chat here. This is a supplemental handout to what I'm going to be talking about. So I just posted it. It's just a simple Google Doc. You can pull it up and use it as a visual aid. So one of the critical things to understand as you are transitioning from formal education to entering the field as a professional is that the structure that you know and are familiar and comfortable with essentially goes out the window pretty rapidly. In school, you have a lot of decisions get made for you based on how you apply and audition. What I mean by that is in school, you do those ensemble auditions that Gabby mentioned, and you get placed into an ensemble, and then you know your rehearsal schedule for the next 3 months. You also have regular affirmations from mentors and peers that are giving you feedback on your playing and feedback on your rehearsal skill and your preparation. And a lot of that goes out the door because you are existing in a different space. When you're in the professional field, you are not always constantly surrounded by your colleagues. In fact, a lot of times you are somewhat on your own, and then get those glorious days where you can reconvene and rehearse. But for the most part, you're going to have to navigate some uncertainties. And that's why I want to talk about networking. No one can do it all alone, and the best way to help yourself professionally is to have a robust network of support. So networking is, in a nutshell, my definition is a social interaction that impacts one's professional career. That's what networking is to me. It's a social interaction that impacts one's professional career. So because it impacts our careers, we want to make sure that we can do it in a way that is helpful to us. Just like how we want to make sure we can play clarinet in a way that's helpful to us, we want to make sure that we are training ourselves to be good networkers. So with my philosophy on this that I call networking for introverts, there are 4 very simple steps that I'm going to talk you through. So if you have a Google Doc pulled up and you want to open your own Google Doc, or if you've got pen and paper, I would write down these 4 steps because they simplify things in a way that is helpful. So the 4 steps are to find what I call events. So find social events where you will meet people. That's step 1, finding them. Step 2 is prepare to attend them. So in the way that we prepare for a performance, we should also prepare to network since it impacts our professional career. Step 3 is attend those events. So that is actually going to places and meeting people. And step 4 is one of the most important parts of the process, and it's also the one that most people don't do. And if I can't recommend enough that you do this step, and that is to follow up with people. It is so critical that if you meet someone and have a good conversation and you see crossover and that there might be potential for collaboration, it is important that you follow up with that person, because people meet people all the time, and you might not be remembered if you don't follow up. But if you do follow up, you have a much better chance of being remembered. So I'm just going to talk briefly through each of those 4 steps, process-wise, because even though I'm in presentation mode right now, I am very much an introvert, and knowing the process and the strategies has helped me network successfully in my career. So step 1, you'll remember, is finding events. So this is essentially finding things you can go to where you may meet people who can help you professionally. That is what we're doing. And there's actually a fair amount of research that goes into this. And you want to make sure that you are researching events that are actually going to be helpful for you. And what I mean by that is, if you are a clarinetist who hypothetically has no interest in playing in an orchestra, but you really want to premiere new chamber works, then going to the orchestra convention might not lead to the results you want. So you want to make sure that when you're researching, you come up with 3 or more terms that help guide your research. And I think about it in terms of what are you doing now that you want to do more of, or what are you not doing that you really want to do? And find a few nouns and adjectives that describe that. So let's pretend like we're the person that wants to premiere new chamber music. Some buzzwords that would help guide your research are the words chamber ensemble, or newly composed music, or if you have a specific instrumentation in mind, like wind quintet, that can help guide your research. And what you're going to do is you're going to find those identifiers, those nouns, adjectives, perhaps even verbs that describe what you want to do more of. And then you are going to research using, I'm assuming, I'm not going to tell you how to research. Just type it into Google and use the libraries that you may have access to. But you're going to use those terms to guide your research. And through that research, you are going to find events that are happening that you could attend to potentially meet people who may be able to help you. So examples of events are going to a concert, setting up a coffee meeting with someone who you haven't met yet, but is doing the work that you would like to do also. And then for the sake of time, I'm going to delve into step 2, which is prepare to attend events. And this is, in a nutshell, what you're going to do is you're going to practice talking about yourself and asking others to talk them about themselves. It's very essential that if you are an introvert like me, that you actually, literally speak into a mirror. You hear yourselves asking your questions of other people, and you, as Roddy just pointed out in the chat, you come up with your 30-second description of a project that you're doing that you want people to know about. So I view this as seriously sometimes as I view practicing my scales. It's simply something, it's a skill that you must practice. Then when you go to those events, my advice is simple: be early, just like Roddy suggested, and come with a list of questions you want to ask people. Everyone likes talking about themselves, so I usually default to, what do you got coming up that you're excited about? What are you working on right now? That kind of thing. And I'm not ashamed to literally have a notebook where I've handwritten my questions and carry it around and like refer to it, because that helps me. So prepare by practicing your speaking, and come with like a cheat sheet that helps you make sure you have the conversations you want to. And again, finally, follow up with people. So you want to follow up with people that you feel like you had a chemistry with, or that you feel like may be able to really help you. And that is usually a simple email, Facebook message, Instagram message that says, hi, we met here, we talked about this, I would love to talk more about it. And there's your template for following up with people. So that's in a nutshell the 4 steps that you can use if you're an introvert to help you network. It is find events where you might meet people that can help you, practice talking in the safety of your own home, go to those events, and then follow up with the people that you met after the event. And that is my short and sweet guide to networking for introverts.
Excellent. Thanks, Eric. That's definitely, if you earned like a music ed degree, that's not necessarily something like I did. That's not necessarily something that we really got to go over, was learning how to do an elevator pitch and things like that. So it's really helpful information. So we're going to transition now into a little bit of a panel discussion, and anyone of the panelists are welcome to answer any of these questions. So I asked the panelists to turn their cameras back on. So the first question we're going to start with is, what was one of the most challenging adjustments that you had to make, and how did you handle that adjustment? And I want to specify that it doesn't have to be within what you just presented about, right? It could be from a different transition in your life. Yeah.
I can bravely go first, I suppose. But mine is actually, I alluded to it earlier. It's that the structure that I knew was gone, and so there was some cognitive dissonance within me in that I was no longer getting those, like I said earlier, daily affirmations from professors and peers about doing a certain kind of work. So I was no longer getting the good job in wind ensemble, good job in orchestra, good job preparing that excerpt. And when that went away, so did my desire to play in large ensembles, just me personally. So I'm more focused on chamber music and composing and being a soloist. So the structure being gone was very hard for me because I had this, well, I should be doing what my teachers, the path my teachers wanted me to walk and helped me walk. Um, but then I realized I didn't actually want to do that path. I wanted to do a different path. But regardless, that support system that I had went away, and like building a new support system based around what I want to be doing with my career, that was particularly challenging for me. I'm so glad I have my family to help me through it.
Excellent. Roddy or Gabby?
Sure. So for me, it was probably the last 10 years of my life. I know it's a really broad, but I don't think I was quite mature enough when I started grad school in 2010. I didn't understand the transition and what was going to be asked of me. I was working 2 full-time jobs while going to school full-time, and it eventually just ate away at me. And I decided to leave grad school, which was hard decision number one. I moved back to South Carolina and spent another year just trying to figure out what I wanted to do, and joined the Army, which was, again, not something that was ever on my radar, not something I ever wanted to do. Basic training was very hard. And then when I got stationed, ironically, at Fort Bragg, where I grew up, um, I decided I was done with music. I decided that since I didn't finish my master's degree, that I'll just do my 4 years in the Army and then I'll be done. So that's why I decided to get the master's in business. And as it turned out, my final project, like my capstone project for the degree, was to write a business plan. And I wrote it on a clarinet studio because I didn't know what else to think of. And so after I graduated, I turned my plan into action and started Oak City Clarinet in Raleigh and started teaching. And then decided that I do love teaching, I always have. And I decided that if I wanted to teach the collegiate level, I had to continue my education. And so that sort of rough transition out of the Army into the real world got me more focused. And I went back to school, finished the master's, and started the doctorate. So you never know what life's going to hand you. You just have to keep rolling with the punches. But it's been a wild ride so far.
I can understand that. I really liked um, your career path is not necessarily linear, right? And even, I mean, I took a year off to teach before I went back to grad school and went through an adjustment period within grad school. Um, that's a really good point to bring up, is that it doesn't have to be all in order as we sometimes like to picture it in our brains. Yeah. Let's see. So, Gabby, did you have an adjustment you'd like to share
Sure,
with us?
yeah. There were two. One that came up actually in my mind during Eric's presentation, which was I also took 2 years to teach public school before I went back for my master's degree. And I really loved it. I taught 5th through 7th grade, chorus, band, and general music, a little bit of everything. And being one of maybe 2 or 3 teachers of music, in the district, as opposed to being constantly surrounded by musicians all the time, was a serious adjustment initially for me. And then when I went into teaching college, is similar. I mean, I'm in a department of music, so there's a lot of music professors, but I am the only single reed person. I'm the only clarinet person. And you sort of miss, you miss having your people around. And that's something that is definitely has been an adjustment professionally.
Absolutely. Another question that we have for the panelists. So based on what you presented on today, what's the biggest misconception that students have, either taking on a professional career or transitioning from high school to college or getting into grad school? What's something that you've seen that is a misconception about that process?
I'd like to talk about a little bit about what I've seen with high school students coming into undergrad. And that is, well, one is that with a lot of majors in college, you can just declare the major if you want to do it. And so some students come in not knowing that there's an audition process for most places, and that's something that you ideally would be preparing for pretty far in advance. And that's one thing. And the other thing is that I see a lot of students who have had a lot of fun in their high school band programs, and they think, I'm going to choose a music major because I love playing in band, which is, a wonderful place to start, right? You want to love music if you're going to choose a music major. But then they arrive, and I think knowing that not every single thing you do is going to be fun and easy during the music major, that it's not all going to feel like that fun feeling you have when you play in band in school. That doesn't mean it's not worth doing and that it's not, super rewarding. But sometimes that level of intensity that sometimes comes with a music major is something that is not expected.
So I would say the biggest misconception going from undergrad to grad school is that where you went to school matters significantly less than you think, or at least it should. We often throw around big names like Juilliard or Curtis or Eastman or CCM, and students often think that if they don't get into one of these schools that their degree is not going to be worthwhile or that their career isn't going to take off. And I would argue that it's what you do while you're at school, it's what you do with the degree rather than the prestige of the name. And so I would encourage everyone to apply to schools like the University of North Carolina at Greensboro. We have, not to plug the school, but for a public school like UNCG to be so well-rounded with the kind of professors that you have, the kinds of things that you can study, the ensembles you can play in. There are 2 clarinet professors at UNC Greensboro, which you don't often see that at public schools. So this idea that the prestige of the school name is more important than what you do with the degree, I think that's the biggest misconception.
I can understand that. I think also thinking about these events through ICA, you're able to meet a lot of clarinetists who teach at different schools, and you kind of can get an idea of maybe I would like to study with this person. Maybe I want to contact them and do an audition. Just from attending events like this is a way to kind of to help keep those things in mind. Yeah. Eric, did you have a misconception that you'd like to share?
Oh yeah. I'm thinking specifically of performance degrees, but it can really apply to many different kinds of music degrees. But you you are not going to have a career with a lot of activity if you hide in the practice room and don't meet anyone. Being able to play the parts that you are given for performances is really critically important. But if no one knows that you exist, then no one can hire you. So if you are graduated or about to graduate and you think, I'll just practice for 4 months in my room and somehow magically I'll get gigs, that's not how it works. You have to go meet people. So in a nutshell, you're gonna have to do things that are not the act of making music to have a career in music. No one that I know anyway gets to spend 100% of their time in the act of creating music. No one who has a music career that I know. So that's the big misconception, I think, for me, is just understanding that you're going to have to do emails, go to meetings, you're going to have to do things other than whatever you went to school to develop a craft for. You're going to have to do things other than that craft.
Very good point. As someone who struggles putting themselves out there, yes, I can completely see that is a thing. The last question that we have from our ICA subcommittee, and then we'll go to a Q&A with questions from the chat. So the last question is for the panelists: what do you recommend as a first step with someone who feels overwhelmed with the idea of taking the next step, whether that's college or undergrad or the professional world?
I can start with this one as well, if we want to go from youngest to oldest again, in terms of the students themselves. I would say the most sort of passive thing you can do is to just go to a school's website and just start poking around. Just go on the music department page, see if there's a page for the clarinet studio, see what the ensemble pages look like. You can listen a lot of times to recordings. If you're not sure what kind of college you want to go to, what if you want to be in a city or the country, just start looking around those websites and see. A lot of times there'll be videos of students who are talking about their experiences. And that's a great way to get started, where you don't actually have to you don't have to call anybody. You can just start clicking on the websites. And then after that, find out who the clarinet professor is and send them an email. And then the follow-up to that is, if you don't hear back right away, don't be afraid to send them a second email. As a professor, I can tell you that sometimes emails get buried that you have every intention of replying to, especially at certain times of the year, the very beginning of the semester, the very end of the semester. And it doesn't mean that they're not interested in you. It just might mean that, they got 58 other emails that day. So don't be afraid to just resend it if you don't hear back right away.
I would like to throw out one of my mom's favorite Southern aphorisms: "The squeaky wheel gets the grease." So what that basically means is, as Gabby was saying, do the research, find out what's going on, what kinds of things they offer, what are the activities the school's doing, what do the students in the studio think about the school, and to sort of blend Gabby and Eric, go and visit. Go and see the school, go and talk to people, have coffee. It's a lot of your fears can be assuaged with just meeting people and talking to them. And I think one of the scariest things to do is, if you're still nervous or you still have some apprehension, take time away from school, take time off. It's one of the hardest things that I think any one of us who has decided to take time off has chosen to do, but in the end, I really feel like it can be rewarding. Maybe you're not mentally prepared for the next step. Maybe you just need some time. Maybe your parents want you to come back home and you can save money and live with them. That's great. Whatever your situation, don't be afraid to take a chance and take some time away from academia. It's rigorous, it's difficult, and if you're not ready, make that decision for yourself. Give yourself the opportunity to be ready for that experience so you can enjoy it to the fullest.
Man, I'm super inspired. This is so great. I think for me, the the step you can take to help transition from your formal education to professional life um, is to do the bravest thing that you can do, and that is ask for help. Ask for help from people who, like I said earlier, people who are doing the work that you want to do. Just ask them for advice, and the one of two things will happen. They'll either be like, yes, I love helping people, and they'll help you and you'll get to advance, or they'll say no and you'll be like, great, now I know I don't want to work with that person because they're unwilling to help me. So in either way, it's a step forward because it helps narrow down the pool of candidates. But that is my advice. It's to just ask people for help at whatever. And if you don't know what you want to do, ask someone for help in figuring out what you want to do. Yeah, I think the support system is really important.
These are all really fantastic and not just applicable to students, but also I think professionals at every level. So the next part of this webinar, we're going to be taking questions from our attendees. So the first question that we got says, for high schoolers planning to study music in college for their bachelors, what should be the thought process between doing music ed, since almost everyone teaches at some aspect, or music performance? That is a fantastic question, and any one of you guys are able to answer that.
I can share my own experience was that I went into school wanting to be a performance major. Was sort of convinced by my teacher to start as a music ed major and then see where things go. And I ended up really liking it and sticking with it. And then went on to do 2 performance degrees after that. So for me, I found it really useful because I got, like I had just put in the chat, I taught for 2 years before my master's. I got classroom teaching experience. I got really comfortable in front of a class. So when it came time to say, yeah, I'm your next TA, I can teach studio class for you when you're gone. It was, it was easier for that master's teacher to believe that I would be able to do it. Right. So for me, it gave me a lot of really good perspectives. And I stretched my music ed degree a little bit and stayed a little longer so that I had time to do 2 recitals instead of 1. And so I kind of like made my own mashup of the 2. I think depending on the school you're at, you may be able to do a lot of performing. Music ed degrees, though, have gotten more and more busy, I think, in the years, the 20 years since I did my undergrad degree. And so that may be a little less possible than it used to be. I think the key is to really think about what you want to be doing as a job. And if you see yourself in a classroom, I think music ed is the way to go. If you absolutely see yourself not in a classroom at all ever, then I think performance is the way to go. For me, I think if you're on the fence, music ed is a good way to go because, like I said, it has those other advantages that can be translated down the line. I hope that made sense. It was kind of a long-winded answer.
So I don't know if we can answer this as well. But I would recommend that, as Gabby was saying, where do you see yourself in the future? Do you see yourself in a classroom? Do you see yourself on a stage? I think one of the biggest misconceptions that we didn't talk about is that music education majors are not good enough to be performers or performers aren't good enough to be educators. I think that people are uniquely, especially in the music world, we're uniquely qualified to do both. So if you wanted to think of job security, I think an undergraduate degree in music education is really smart. Um, God forbid that we get rid of public school music. I hope that never happens. But if you have an ed degree and you're certified to teach in a certain state, you're going to be able to find employment a lot faster, in my opinion, than people with performance degrees. All my degrees have been in performance. I wish I had gotten a degree first. And, as Gabby said, she got 2 performance degrees after her ed degree. So you can, and another thing, being a performance all the way through, I'm going to hopefully be teaching at the collegiate level with no music education degree. That capstone, that terminal degree, the doctoral degree, is supposed to prepare you for those sorts of things. So just do away with the idea that you can't do both, because you absolutely can.
We have another question for the panelists. Did any of you go to a small private school and get a lot of playing experience as an undergrad? So I'm thinking maybe the idea of going to a smaller school so you can get even more experience, especially looking at some of these really large schools that have multiple professors or a really big studio. Anybody have experience with that, or any thoughts they'd like to share?
I went to Ball State University in my undergrad, so it's not a small private school. So no, I did not attend small private institutions, but I can tell you one thing that I did, which set a habit of being able to ask for performance opportunities professionally, was that every chance I got, whether it was my undergrad degree or my master's degree, I was asking for work outside of campus. So I was playing off campus quite a bit. I actually set up my own recitals off campus and got paid to do them. So I think that is a really important aspect of why I have the diverse career that I have, because I was able to go to the places I lived are small towns, so Muncie is not big, and my master's was at Bowling Green State, so Bowling Green, Ohio is not very big either, but I was able to set up my own performance opportunities while I was in school, and I think that has had a tremendous impact on my career.
So I actually did go to a small private school. I went to Furman University for my undergrad. And when we started, there were two of us, three. There were 3 of us in my class. By the time I graduated, I was the only one. And I think we had 3 or 4 clarinet majors by the time I graduated. So that meant I played in absolutely every ensemble. And we had wind ensemble, orchestra, we had a concert band, we had a basketball band, marching band, chamber music. I did everything. And conversely, at UNCG, I think there are 35 or 40 of us in the studio with 2 professors. And again, I'm playing in absolutely everything. But this time I decided I wanted to, rather than, having not really have that choice. I think really performance, like Eric said, is going to be what you make of it. You can play as much or as little as you want. You just have to put yourself out there.
Excellent. I think something, it also maybe your personality, depending on if you would feel more comfortable in a smaller studio versus if you would feel comfortable in a larger studio. That's also something to consider. If there are any other questions from our attendees, you can send them into the chat. Speak now or forever hold your peace. No, I'm just kidding. I'm sure you can contact our panelists. Their emails were in the presentations. But other than that, I think I think we're just out of time, so I might hand it over to Vanessa.
Yes, we just wanted to again extend our deepest thanks to all of you, all of our guest artist panelists today, this week, including Gabby and Roddy and Eric, for sharing their extensive experiences and knowledge with us. A huge thank you to Meredith Gersten for coordinating and moderating this workshop. And finally, thank you to everyone who attended and made this possible. Please do take a moment to complete the workshop feedback poll in the chat to tell us what you think so we can continue to put on events like this. Since this is our very last event, I just wanted to tell all of you on behalf of the youth committee what a joy this has been for us to put together. It's been a really special experience that we are all really grateful to have had, and grateful to all of you for coming. And we want to send everyone away with a great summer, and I look forward to putting events like this together for you in the future. So thank you so much, everyone. Have a great afternoon and a great summer. Bye-bye.